Thank you, Cantor Spilker, for inviting me to reflect on the intersection between this week's Parsha, Tetzaveh, my own and others' experiences with disability and healing, and how it connects with Judaism and chanting Torah. This has been, and it continues to be, an interesting journey. I just finished reading Rabbi Sharon Brous' new book, The Main Effect, and at the end of the book, she shares the story, which Cantor Spilker also talked about in her Yom Kippur Yizkor sermon, of the rabbi from the old country who insists that the mourner rip his clothing to signify the mourning. His kriyah, or ripping of the clothing, is to be for the entire first week of mourning. But what, the man asked, is someone to do who only has one suit, shirt, or dress? The rabbi said, you may tack the tear with rough stitches after 1 week, and you may repair the garment more carefully after a full month has passed. The garment can be worn again, but people who see you will notice that you have suffered a loss which has changed you forever. It will never be perfect, but beauty will be found even in the imperfection. This week's Parsha, Tetzaveh, is about beauty and perfection. God tells Moses to bring his brother Aaron and his sons to be priests, and describes in detail the process by which sacred garments should be made for them by those with skill. For lechavod ultifaret, for honor and for beauty. Lechavod ultifaret. The garments, the olive oil that must be used, the sacrifices, the embroidery on the garments must all be perfect. Linen with red, blue, and purple threads. All of this in service to God. Some of the interpretations of this parsha speak to how the rabbis must also prepare themselves spiritually to come to the altar, and what we should wear to ensure that we are presenting our best, perfect selves to the place of worship, clothed in our finest, as priests did. But we are not perfect. We are human. How do we then think about how to present ourselves with our finest intentions in mind to honor and serve? At the same time, God requests that Moses bring together all who are skillful to make garments. The concept of using skills and perfection are embedded in the process of being holy. Rabbi Laura Geller goes on to explain further, but God commanded Moses to make these holy garments, that is, to instruct them in the improvement of their souls and their characters, so that their inner selves should be clothed in majesty and splendor. Before I return to this discussion, I want to share with you my own experiences and the connection to disability and perfection, bringing together Torah, personal experience, and Jewish Disability Awareness, Accessibility, and Inclusion Month. For the past 4 years, I've been experiencing my own health journey, working to make my inner self clothed in majesty and splendor as my outer body went through significant changes. I've also been talking with others who've had health journeys of their own which have impacted and transformed them. I've spoken to congregants, members of support groups, and others who are in the process of healing and adapting to their new selves and their situations. I asked them about their experiences. One woman told me that she had never considered herself disabled, but using that label shed a different and positive light on what she was going through. Others told me their experiences were difficult and sucked, which is the operant word, but all chose to do what they had to in order to recreate their lost skills. In order to recreate their lost skills, to learn different and new skills, walking, talking, eating, moving, all wanted to get back to what they had lost and continue down a different path in their journeys. All of our journeys carried with them great amounts of uncertainty and emotion. A little bit of background. Cantor Spilker mentioned that I learned to chant Torah here in 2007. Learning how to chant is not trivial or easy, but it was a joy for me. Some come to learn and study Torah, the Tree of Life, through studying commentary and scholarship, but for me it was through chanting. Having never learned chanting as a youth, I finally understood what all the squiggles and marks were on top and bottom of the Hebrew letters in the Torah. Not in the Torah, in the books. because, having music and singing training, it finally all came together for me. Learning to chant requires a number of skills: musicianship, Hebrew memorization, learning to read from the Torah scroll without any vowels or marks, and more. When I began to chant from the Torah scroll without vowels or marks, one of the things I have trouble doing is staying on the correct line. So I may read a line twice. When I began to chant from the Torah scroll without vowels or marks and more, when I begin to chant a parsha, it starts with learning what the words mean, reading the text, and considering where the melody meets the words. Where in the text are the important words? What are the fillers? Which for me are things like who begat who and who moved where. You can see where the melody changes and goes up and down at various points. It's one thing to read the opening verses from a book, but the skills of reading from a scroll are much harder. There are no vowels, there are multiple melodies or tropes to be learned, and learning all of this brought me joy and reconnected me to Judaism and Torah. I was going to chant a couple lines of this week's portion, but I'm not going to do that tonight. But I would urge all of you to look at Exodus chapter 28 and look for the words L'chavod u'tifaret, for honor and beauty. So my health journey began about 5 years ago when I started having symptoms of what I now know to be a tumor on the lining of the brain called meningioma. I later discovered my tumor was a rare one. By April 2020, I had a gamma knife radiation, which shrunk the tumor, but by fall of 2021, my tumor came back. I was off balance, had difficulty walking without hugging the walls or using a walker. I had severe headaches, and I had fuzzy thinking. In December of 2021, I had surgery at Mayo Clinic to remove the tumor, and for several months all I could do was just show up. I also had 2 additional surgeries, 3 types of radiation, and many doctors, nurses, and health professionals. At one time I counted 14 doctors on my list. It was hard to keep everything straight. I had speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and vision therapy, psychotherapy, support groups, and more. And this type of surgery is considered a traumatic brain injury and can cause a loss of functions, in my case, balance, thinking, spatial vision, reading, memorization, and the ability to sing on key and speak clearly. I even had difficulty chanting Torah, in addition to doing other things. 3 months after surgery, I chanted from Megillat Esther for Purim. I had no clue how impaired I was. I could barely go up the stairs to the bima without clinging to Cantor Spilker. I could remember half my 3 lines, and I could not sing on key. So thank you very much for helping me with this. So I was disabled, and I did not know that. When we think about our illnesses as disabilities, does it shift our perspective at all? I don't know. I'm still thinking about that. How can we incorporate the healing practices into our lives? For many of us, healing takes a lot of time, over time. How should we share our stories with our community, and how much should we share? I've never really shared my experiences in community before, so it's new for me. How can we begin to have these conversations? And how can we do better at inclusion for all? I will share some common practices and things we can do to be supportive and helpful in the context of Jewish practice. Initially, we have basic physical needs like meals or rides that our caring community and Jewish Federation provide well and can help with. These are important at first, but as we move forward and as we continue, we need to think about getting nourishment for our souls as well as just our bodies. First, we think about how to change what we eat for optimum nutrition, getting the right things, exercising. And when we're ready, begin to explore meditative practices, spiritual practices, which can help us become more reflective and calmer. We can engage in meditation through the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, as well as studying yoga. With them, I attended healing services at Mount Zion, listened to recordings of meditations and music for healing. I joined a chanting workshop with Rabbi Shefa Gold. And we can also add things like visualization or sound healing to help us integrate our inner and outer selves. Many resources urge us to reconsider the importance of finding meaning in our lives. I had retired during this period in time, so work was no longer my source of meaning. So I read a lot, I studied Musar with the rabbis, took workshops and seminars through Hineni and other groups, and met with a support group that I meet with every Wednesday morning for my particular health concern. Throughout all of this, those who are healing need to focus on finding connection with other people. As the rabbi mentioned in his sermon and in our prayers tonight, surrounding ourselves with support and love. I found a different kind of therapist as my needs and concerns changed. I joined the weekly support group I mentioned, and I relied on old friends and found new ones, and joined a Mount Zion small group. And I apologize, Joni, if I get this wrong. I blanked on what it's called. But it's for women of a certain age, a soulful and spiritual group. It's great. I also knit healing shawls with the knitting group. And I'm not such a great knitter still. I cannot talk and knit at the same time. And I also found that prayer, which Rabbi also talked about, was a really big deal. Many people of all different religions and denominations asked if they could pray for me, and I accepted all of them. I said yes. And it's our own prayers and prayers that other people make for us. There was one day when I met with the Chabad Lubavitch chaplain came to visit me in my room. I also had the Catholic chaplain come that same day. So, and there is evidence from research with the Dalai Lama that this does make a difference. So, I just have to clear my brain for a minute and finish. One last important new skill I focused on is self-compassion. I've relied on the work of Dr. Kristen Ness, who says, with self-compassion, we give ourselves the same kindness and care we'd give to a good friend. We give ourselves the same kindness and care we'd give to a good friend. This is some of the hardest work we need to engage in for ourselves and reflect on. My talk would not be complete without including hope. The belief that we can be our best selves again, whatever that means, is the most essential belief we need to adopt. Hope itself may do much to keep us grounded within our time. And hope itself may do much to keep us grounded. We hope with doctors, therapists, friends, and with ourselves, and enable us to be compassionate with ourselves no matter where we are. The overall impact of engaging in these practices, which heal and center ourselves, helps us to adapt to the challenges we face. We don't know what the future holds. There is much uncertainty, but we do need to hold on to whatever future we can imagine for ourselves. The concept of visibly mended garments, as practiced by the Japanese and others and called boro stitching and sashiko, is a better metaphor for our lives than is perfection. In visible repair, our garment is repaired in a decorative manner, cobbled together in a different way. In any human endeavor, there is never perfection, and we end up reinventing ourselves in a way that is more human. We need to transform our beliefs as to what is possible for us and love that future. And what is the best way for us as a congregation to increase our awareness and respond to those who come to our community in a state of imperfection, striving to prepare ourselves? How do we learn to see and emphasize our spiritual preparation and our intention, rather than what may be physically perfect? What can we do to help others heal when they come to us? Torah is life, and disabilities and diversity will be our lives. L'chavod u'tifaret, for honor and beauty. I leave you with a haiku for Peshat Tetzaveh by Helene Cohen. To make holy robes, it takes all of God's colors. Seek diversity. Amen.